Hello, hello.
No.
you,
Once
you wanna
again,
say it?
you have
Okay, you say it.
hello, hello. As we have established, this is how I start all of the episodes now.
You have the chance to do this twice because right now this is future us going back to fix a mistake. In about 1 or 2 minutes from now, you're gonna hear the name of this podcast is the Boilerplate Startup. This is not the real name. And we're going to discuss naming conventions later on. So, this was a very good example of why you should consider abstract names. The new name of our podcast is. So, what is it again?
It is Anthology of Startup Anecdotes.
This is the Anthology of Startup Anecdotes episode. Welcome and please enjoy the intro.
Life Math, a podcast undescribably tangled, unnecessarily complex, a podcast undescribably tangled, unnecessarily complex, so bad that it's good. Life Math.
Hello, hello.
You surprised me with my own greeting this time. Well, hello, hello, back to you.
We were joking about it because Iskren always starts with hello, hello, and then he just made this intro, but we had to cut it, so I just stole.
Stealing my hello, hello thunder.
This episode, like any other, will be a bit different. In fact, I have a rule for this podcast that I wanted to share. So, whenever we bring up a topic, each one of us can tell one story about it. And this is the only way in which you can talk about it. What do you think about that?
Enforced anecdotability. Sounds good, sounds good. Let's make it personal.
Yes. It's called the Boilerplate Startup, and it's very special for startups. And we want to share some of our experiences, what are the most important things to think about, and what are the must do's at the beginning of setting up your startup. So, Iskren, can you please tell us a bit more about your startup experience so far?
Okay, so my background with startups goes all the way back when I was 17 and I joined my first startup as a eager young software developer. And we're developing this device with all the hardware and software and firmware. And I saw really all the layers of development, both engineering wise and then kind of more salesy and marketingy, even though a bit less of that side. And then I hopped onto another startup several years later, about 4 years later. The second startup was about financial tools. It was a tool for diversification, how a different project could play out, how a software product would be built and later sold. And then finally, now in terms of startups, I'm in Thriveta, which is another startup. This one, I've been there since day one. We've been building it for some time now, and it has brought a lot more insight for me personally into how to build a startup, what to do, what not to do. So I have this experience now, and we're talking with Iliya that, as he'll tell us in a second, he as well has experience in some startup areas, and we just want to share with other people our own personal view of the topic, just startups, what to do, what not to do, stuff like that. We don't want to do it as a sort of course book or something, lecture notes in any way. We just want to share more personal stories of just what we have observed and thought about in the process. Probably it's going to be quite anecdotal. We'll just tell stories about something observed and thought about in the process. Probably it's going to be quite anecdotal. We'll just tell stories about something interesting, something of value that we have realized with time, and just want to share with you guys. So, without further ado, after I have introduced briefly kind of my, I suppose, three separate startup instances, of which, by the way, one a success, one a failure, one currently undergoing, I'll pass it back to you. So, how about you? What is your startup background?
Yeah, so I started a couple of years ago. I joined my first startup, as these startup people say.
I moved to the Bay
Yeah,
Area.
no, not at all. I moved home and I joined a couple of friends who were creating online courses. In the beginning, I was creating online courses as well. However, this operation, we were 3 or 4 people in the beginning, and then this operation blew up to be our operation, blew up to be our own platform with our own website, our own marketing team, our own course creation. Let's say division, but it was basically an operation of 10 people that were creating courses, an operation of 10, 15 people working on the platform, some of these overlapping, including myself. I was there for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, I believe. And I've learned a lot along the way, and I've been very much involved into making the organization scalable in terms of human resources, meaning that new people can come in the organization and they can start working on the already existing projects while maintaining the quality, right? So you can think about me as the boring person who is putting all these standard operating procedures in place and telling people, no, you should definitely do it our way because this fits into the overall framework that we've created. But yeah, overall, it was a 365 Data Science is the name, by the way. We're successful and everything was all right. So my track record is better than Iskren so far.
I have the quality. No, yeah, I have the quantity. You have the quality.
Indeed. And now we're working together on Triveta. Now, after this short commercial break, we can get into the actual podcast. How about that? Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is communication. And not any communication, but communication in a newly created company. It doesn't need to be a startup, but it has to be an operation of more than one person, right? Even if you're a freelancer, you still need an accountant or some people around you. So it's never you alone. So Isom, tell me one thing about communication that you want to share with a story.
Story time. So, okay, communicating. I've recently been thinking about, kind of realized it to a much larger extent in Triveta actually. And that's how much help it could be to open up communication channels between people that otherwise talked through you. And that's, I guess, a bit from the perspective of managing people. And because we're talking in stories and anecdotes, I'll give the precise setting which I was thinking about this. In Triveta, I'm leading a team of developers, and separately we have the design division where they make the design for the product. Separately we have the marketing people who do all the digital marketing, SEO things. And so initially, the way I had set it up is sort of, well, developers just kind of chat to me, and then through me they talk to the other divisions like design and marketing, and vice versa, they talk to developers through me. And it sounded like a good setup because this way I know everything that's happening, and I can't, developers just kind of chat to me, and then through me they talk to the other divisions like design and marketing, and vice versa, they talk to developers through me. And it sounded like a good setup because this way I know everything that's happening, and I can't miss something, and that's kind of my job, right? To know everything that's happening tech-wise with the product. But then as we kind of grew in the number of developers and in just the number of things that we're doing in separate avenues, I realized that that's exceptionally non-scalable because I was overwhelmed with having to be in the middle of various people's communications. And so then I very carefully tried to open up individual one-to-one communication just pathways between various people. So say between a front-end developer and a design team. And I explicitly, this, as a practical step, this means explicitly creating, say, a shared channel between the to talk directly to each other instead of through you. And it just saves a great deal of time. And it sounds a bit trivial maybe that, oh, people should just talk to each other. But the point is that they don't, like it's very...
May I help you on this point? Currently, I'm in the process of creating this alumni organization. And we're having this issue that there is this group where is everybody, but nobody can speak to each other than in the group. So nobody is speaking at all. There are no channels of communication. Like I have to add these people on Facebook to be able to chat with them, which I would never do, right? So there is no communication going on except for one-to-one with the creator of the group.
Yeah, so I guess this granularity of communication, or if there's just a general group for everyone, nobody will be using it. It's going to be just like an announcement board. If they're only private one-to-one channels, that's something else, but there's no like kind of space for general conversation. So granularity of communication, or if there's just a general group for everyone, nobody will be using it. It's going to be just like an announcement board. If they're only private one-to-one channels, that's something else, but there's no like kind of space for general conversation. So you have to really think about the connections between people, what connects them, and how you can organize your channels to encourage people to talk in a productive way without having to go through those extra hoops of passing through some man in the middle to just pass information left or right. So I guess that's my main communication point of recent realization. What about yours, Iliya?
Yeah, so to me it's quite similar, but from another angle. What I think is very important is to have great transparency in whatever you're doing, because this motivates the team much more. They feel a part of the company, even though, say, a developer would rarely have some, let's say, administrative decisions or design decisions. That's not always true, right? But they feel a part of the whole if they can see this communication. So from my experience so far, what I've always tried to do is to bring some more transparency by creating these groups that are open for everyone, by creating these knowledge hubs. Whenever somebody finds some interesting information, they should share it. There is this channel, Work Reads, that I'm trying to nurture in our Slack.
Still not sponsored by Slack, just say.
Where everybody, whenever you learn something new, something cool, just share it with the rest. They don't need to read it, but they have it, and at some point they may remember about it, and they will know that you know a lot about it because you've been interested in the topic. So to me, setting up a structure which allows this transparency to be able to communicate outside of, okay, so we went through the communication part of it. How about the delegation part of it? How do you keep track of all the stuff that you have to do? How do you keep track of the stuff that you can outsource to someone, or you can even get help from your friend, partner, or whoever wants to help you?
I've been thinking about this precise question, and it hasn't been just work related, it's also life related in our out of office life. Yeah, so what I've been thinking is how each task, let's say I assign it points, to what extent is it delegatable? Meaning, to what extent I can describe the boundaries of the task to some external person and they can do it without knowledge of 10 other things. So in terms of the software, if I want to get somebody to add a new module to the system, maybe that's a good task to outsource because it doesn't require knowledge of add a new module to the system. Maybe that's a good task to outsource because it doesn't require knowledge of much of the already existing system. It's just a separate thing. They need to know just a bit of how to attach it to the rest of the system. If I want somebody to do like some core restructuring of some very central piece of the code, it's a pretty poor task to offload because then this person I'm delegating it to, they need to really understand the whole of the system, and so they need to be really well onboarded already. So in one way, I measure how well the task is offloadable, and that's kind of a trivial thought. Okay, makes sense. Now, on the other hand, the other side of it, which I discovered later in having to delegate tasks, and that's quite helpful to me, is thinking about how easily verifiable the task is, right? So if I'm looking at a task and it seems very easy to delegate to somebody else, I can easily describe what needs to happen, I can just check it at them. Then still those types of tasks split into two types. One of them is tasks that are very easy to verify that they have been done correctly. I'll give an example from personal life. If you have, say, some person come to your house to clean every 1 or 2 weeks, it's a task that is easily delegatable. There's various services that you can just hire somebody, they come over, they clean for an hour or two, you pay them. It's a very easy transaction, and you can very easily verify whether it's actually clean. You just watch it, look at it, and you can see if it's clean or not. So it's a perfect task to offload. However, there are other tasks that are easily delegatable but very hard to verify whether they're done well. And very often code is this way because you delegate the task to somebody else, you describe what needs to happen, they understand it, they're capable of doing it, they do something, and then for you to test it thoroughly, it's going to take you as long as it's actually good software, whether it has any hidden bugs. So I think this middle ground is what I've discovered more and more recently, that it exists. Some tasks that are easy to delegate, but very hard to verify, and they are like a danger ground.
This is one hell of a story.
It was exceptionally non-anecdotal, but
Yeah, so next time you have your chance.
to actually get the format right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Breaking my format very easily verifiable.
Yeah, because you delegated to me, to answer the thing, and see, you're meta playing into it. But anyway, that's just what I want to say on the topic of delegation, that story or not, you should be very weary of tasks that are easily delegatable but very hard to verify.
It's very interesting because you're speaking from the perspective of someone who has to delegate stuff. Now, me being the CMO, I guess, head of marketing, I don't have a team in Triveta. I'm just like trying to steal from other places, other co-founders, so they can help me out. However, I have this Kanban system. So there's, you have Kanban, you have Scrum. We're not gonna talk about this, but Trello is a great tool. It's a very well done tool for Kanban style of work, which is you have a long backlog of tasks, and then you just take them one by one and you start doing them. So this is what I've employed in the past, and especially now, whenever I think of a task that needs to be done, I placed in the backlog. So currently I have a backlog of more than 100 tasks. So I'm preparing for the time when another person enters the organization, right? So I can take tasks to be done. I placed in the backlog. So currently I have a backlog of more than 100 tasks. So I'm preparing for the time when another person enters the organization, right? So I can take tasks from this backlog and I can give it to this person. And actually, whenever somebody has capacity, I actually go through my backlog and I'm like, okay, this is delegatable to this person, this is delegatable to that person. And I'm trying to make the most out of it in this way. Now, this is especially useful when you're working with people that are with you full time and you don't have anything to give them. This is the worst thing, right? This is the worst thing you can do as a manager, to have an employee and not have any work for them. There are two reasons for this. First of all, the company is losing money for every second that the person is not working, right? And it's okay to take breaks, right? But there's no work for them. They're demotivated. They stop believing in the company. They stop believing in the idea. They're like, nobody's giving me work. Nothing's going on. So from their perspective, the company is not doing anything because they don't have work, right?
That was a great story, bro. Very personal.
You want me to give you a story? Okay, so our head of design is my wife. From time to time, she doesn't have stuff to do because the dev team is lagging a bit behind the design team for one reason or another. And at one point, the design team had created 1 month worth of design stuff for the dev team. So there was no point in the design team to continue creating designs, mainly because the product is very likely to change in 1 month. So no need to create designs. Now she comes, okay, so what do we do with the design team? We're two people that basically shouldn't do anything more because it's gonna hurt the product if we do it from like today. Good thing I had 1,000 tasks. So I actually took the design team inside the marketing team. So basically our design team is working with on the product with the devs, but whenever the devs can't handle them, I take them in the marketing team. So have a big backlog, and whenever somebody comes to you and wants to help you, have something to give them, like I did in this story to Masha.
Okay, so since we're doing stories, I realized I can give a very particular story for what I meant as well for delegatable but non-verifiable tasks. So I said that delegatable and verifiable is, say, assessing whether a new cleaner at the office, even not at home, is good at the job, whether you want to rehire them another time. And then a task that we've recently run into, well, actually it now, is delegatable and very hard to verify, which is translating your product into a foreign language. Because, say, right now with Rivetta, we're translating into German everything, and we have hired a person, and yeah, we believe in this person, we trust them, but the issue is that I don't speak German, you don't speak German, he's going to give us some German translations. We have no idea if they're correct or not. And so it's kind of trust based.
Actually, we do.
How?
Our co-founder Katya, she used to study in Germany.
No, but then my point is that she has to go through each and every single sentence, phrase, etc., to make sure that it's actually translated well and stuff. Like, it's very hard to verify, and this is precisely the type of task I mean.
Trust issues. You have to trust the people you work with. You can't check everything they do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That you can check everything, but you need to have like a general way to verify overall.
They do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That you can check everything, but you need to have like a general way to verify overall stuff. And with translations, it's very hard, like, because there's no cohesion between, like, each row of the translation is its own separate independent thing, so it's quite hard to verify translations. Anyway, enough about this topic. I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about a much lighter, kind of even funnier, but I think actually quite important topic we've discussed briefly before. It's naming. The importance of naming things, and I'll jump in directly with a story. And the story is that in the company I used to work at before, it's a trading company, and I joined the software team. And this tech stack that they were using, it had been growing for many years, for more than 10 years. There was a lot of it's one ground system consisting of, I don't actually remember now, but like, say, 70 subsystems, and each one of them has its own separate name because you have to refer to it in some way. And the approach that they had taken, and others do it as well obviously, is that they had named everything on purpose with non-semantic names that were marine themed, meaning that instead of calling some module exactly what it does, trying to be super semantic and descriptive, no, you just take this piece of software and you call it, dolphin, or you call it vortex, just some random word. And in that case, in that team, they had chosen everything to be marine themed, but it was kind of arbitrary. They were just nice names. There's many nice animals in the sea. This way, you ensure that as the product evolves, animals in the sea. This way, you ensure that as the product evolves and as things change what they actually are, names don't become wrong. And in this whole tech stack where everything was called like orca and dolphin, anchor, stuff like this, there was this one service that had been left with this. There was this one service that had been left with its original name from like way back in the day. I don't even know exactly when. It was kind of just to show with a negative example why you shouldn't name things for what they supposedly do. And it was called Greek's receiver, but the point is that by now it had evolved so much that it wasn't receiving things, it was sending things, and it wasn't Greek's way to sending. Initially it was a Greek's receiver, it was named this, the name stuck, and then it evolved through the years. It wasn't at all a Greek's receiver anymore, but it was still called this. And I don't know, this example just really stuck with me, that basically once you name something, it's exceptionally hard to change its name, and it's much harder to change its name than to, through natural course of things, change what it actually does. So my suggestion is always name things just with some unrelated, just for Mac, Sierra Leone, Big Sur, this exact same concept. Yeah, I would definitely recommend it for all sorts of things. What do you think about that?
I completely agree with you, and we've discussed it many times. What I've been getting from some people, though, is that they don't really understand it, and I think this example with Android and Apple is especially good because Amazon, Apple, Google, these are names that are completely irrelevant to the product that they're developing, And that's the way it should be, I think. And that's why we called our product Triveta, because it means nothing, right? On the other side, you have companies like Facebook, which is still a very famous brand, right? But it literally means Facebook, because it used to be this book of faces of people, of university students, right? So I have nothing to add. Now,
But we want a story, 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 story.
you want a story? Yeah. Okay, I'll give you a story. Oh, I have so many frameworks that I want to talk about and no stories. um, but
Naming is the general. It doesn't have to be about this side of naming. Just name. So the power of words, the power of names, the power of labeling something. It could even be labeling.
okay, let's talk about folders. While I was creating online courses, in the beginning we were several people. Each one of us was creating their own courses, and we were organizing them in various ways. You have text files, audio files, video files, project files, and one course is something like 2,000 files, 5,000 files. There's so many files to name, so many files to organize, so many files to order, right? Problem was, each one of us, 1,000 files, there's so many files to name, so many files to organize, so many files to order, right? Problem was, each one of us had their own organization. And now when you have 5 courses, it's all right, but when you have 50 or 100 courses, it becomes a problem. And nobody can find anything. Nobody except for the author can find anything at all, because each one of us had completely different organization. In the end, we took these common standards, common organizational standards. Didn't work out, by the way. And everyone was taking these shortcuts, and everyone was like, oh, nobody is gonna notice if I didn't name this file. So when we were moving to our own platform, our own solution, and we were building it with this outside company, this is for the 365 data science platform, I had this rule and this ask from them that each file should be named in a particular way and organized in a particular way, so that a computer program can read it and order it inside of the system. So at the end, I managed to enforce this naming, which was one thing with the whole system. And every course creator who didn't name it properly would place their course in the system, and then there would be errors, like multiple errors, and they would be like, oh, you didn't name this right, you didn't name that right. But at the end of the day, this was completely foolproof to name everything correctly, be able to find everything correctly, be able to store everything correctly in a way which lasts through time, right?
Enforced naming patterns. Good stuff.
Yeah, I like this. And a tiny story, just tip: when you have a folder of stuff and you wanna the stuff ordered in the folder, you can use numbers. It could be 1, 2, 3. Like the stuff ordered in the folder, you can use numbers. It could be 1, 2, 3. Like this is a prefix, which doesn't mean that they're ordered in some semantic way, but basically the way you want them to appear in the folder. And if you want something in the very beginning, you can place underscore before it. And in this way, it's going to be always on top.
Folder organization.
This is a commercial break. If I had to create a commercial on this specific episode, it had to be a story, right? What better story than how Iskren and I decided to work together on our mutual project Triveta? Well, Iskren was working and trading in London. I was at home with my wife and co-founder Masha. She's also our head of design. Iskren and I were just about to play some Dota with a friend of ours. But I asked him to get on a quick call before. Did Iskren know we had a pitch prepared for him? It was about 40 slides long. And let me tell you, Masha creates amazing slides. So we had these 40 amazing slides ready for Iskren, and now I'm gonna try to summarize them as a story or something, as I cannot show them to you. It went something like this. Hey, so what do you think about this idea? A very simple tool which allows professionals to host a video meeting and get paid. Such a simple idea, yet nobody has made it simple enough and good enough. So I guess you can ask something like, what's the spin of this idea? Glad you asked. I have a slide on it. It will not be a marketplace. 21st century people care about their identity, their personal brand. And moreover, it's full of marketplaces. Take Amazon for once. Marketplaces, big marketplaces. Take Amazon for once. Marketplaces become big through providers, and then these providers are increasing the profits of the company. However, once the marketplace is big enough and stronger than any individual provider, they start increasing their commissions and they start essentially robbing the providers who made them great in the first place. This is not what we want to do. We want to be a partner that these professionals can trust forever. And you know the best part? We can totally make this completely for free and get paid only when providers get paid. So in this way, there will be no risk for them to start with us. So for the purposes of this story, Iskren asked something like, who are the clients then? Well, glad you asked. I have like a bunch of slides on it. So sole proprietors, small businesses below 10 people. To empower small businesses because they are the creators, they are the facilitators, they are the people who care about each and every customer they have. So what do you think happened? Well, we did play some Dota that night. It was not only pitching all evening. The next day, though, Iskren wrote to me, hey man, let's have a call. Or no, he actually just sent me a link. I clicked the link and I realized it's an open source video solution that he had already spun up to try and scope the whole amount of the tech work. In that very moment, I knew it. He was totally in. We hadn't discussed ownership, we hadn't discussed financing, we hadn't discussed who else is going to be on the team. What we knew was that we want to work on this project together. We knew that the idea is very good and we wanted to enable the people who care about their customers. This was the online services revolution and we wanted to be a part of it. Now, 1 year later, Triveta.com is going strong. Our product is ready, we have a big team, and we have the same drive to enable all small businesses and sole proprietors and freelancers to be online in the cheapest and fastest way possible. So if you ask me, make a commercial about Triveta.com in this episode, these are my 2 cents.
Okay, so since we're talking startup stuff and since we want to talk about more, let's say, interesting parts of it, there's this concept that we've discussed before. It's quite famous. There's various books on the topic about failing fast and trying many ideas as fast as possible, dedicating as little resource to each one as possible, fast as possible, dedicating as little resource to each one as possible, just to get results as quickly as possible. So, like, what story can you tell us about failing fast as a concept?
Oh man, I have so many stories about failing fast and many about failing slow.
Failing slow is bad, right?
Failing slow is very bad. So my favorite story, I don't know what my favorite means here, but because it's a story about failing, so it shouldn't be my favorite, but it went like this. We were trying to build this YouTube channel and we had 150,000 subscribers and things were going well, but at some point they came to a halt, right? They stopped increasing. My understanding of this is that YouTube works in the following way. If you are very consistent, you always post videos, these videos abide by the rules and everything, you want to nurture you as a creator. So what happens in many cases is that a channel reaches, let's say, 10,000 subscribers in one way or another, and then they see this enormous spike to, let's say, 50,000, 60,000, 100,000 subscribers in a relatively short amount of time. I've seen many channels have this growth. And then you have this exponential trajectory and you're like, oh, I have completely won the algorithm. and at some point it stalls, and then there is another big spike after some time, but it's never this big, right? So I think this is something YouTube are doing on purpose. So I wanted to test this out, and what we did was we decided to create a series of very high quality videos. So we created a series of 10 videos in which we picked the best keywords, the best videos, the best videos. So we created a series of 10 videos in which we picked the best keywords, the best videos, the best course content creators. So we were like two content creators were working on it, two designers were working. We were doing everything by the book. It was not kind of prototype. No, no, no. We were like, we have a YouTube channel, it's very good, we have the reach, we have everything. Let's make this effort for 1 month and see if we can break through this wall of YouTube or not. And we created some of the highest quality videos that I've seen online on these topics. For instance, how to transition from economics to data science. And this video turned out to be extremely profitable because 10% of people that would click a link there would buy our product, which cost $200, right? So this was extremely good video, extremely high quality content, but our YouTube channel subscribers didn't grow at all. Nothing happened there. So the videos were amazing. The content was amazing. The team that created these things, we had more than 1 million paying students at this point. And then YouTube is like, you know what? I don't like these videos. Like, and then if we had gated them and sold them as an online course, they would make us much more money than YouTube. Point of the story being, we made this very concentrated sprint. So this was not a prototype, this was not a prototype or whatever you want to talk about in a minute, but it was a sprint with the highest quality resources, after which I told myself, okay, YouTube, no more resources for you because you don't deserve them. And and I was thinking, if 1 year later these videos had picked up and everything was changing, then I would be wrong and we could invest some more in the same way. But it's been a year and a half and not much, right? Don't devote a year into it. See if it works. If not, just leave it. How about you?
So I guess the main point of your story was exactly that, to gauge whether investing more in YouTube is a good strategy for you was, okay, we're going to make those good courses and see what happens. So kind of it's your minimal effort to get data whether it's worth putting more effort, right? It's the minimal scope. So you scope the minimal thing you can do to really ensure whether it's worth it.
Yeah, it was a scope of 10 videos, yeah, which were different, by the way. They were completely different, like top 5 ways to do whatever, top 5 finance trends. Then it was like how to transition from this to that. Then it was like computer science versus data science. They were all in the field, but all different names, all different types. Some were lists, some were something else. We tried everything and everything was top notch.
Yeah. I mean, I would even say this was, a bit on the not super fast failing side, but it's in the same spirit. I understand what you mean, because you obviously could have dedicated much more, and more importantly, you could have continued pouring resource into it after this 1 month. So the good side is that you just stopped.
Yeah, in the end, the low effort, high impact things won. Which were like videos that we just reposted on YouTube and they worked.
But yeah, anyway, so my personal story that I want to tell on this topic is actually quite similar in terms of its point, even though its setting is very different. Yeah, while I was speaking, I was just thinking about what story would I give, and I think the best example about this I can think of from my experience is back about a year ago, maybe, with a friend of mine. We decided to just test the waters, try out a dropshipping business model, which, if it all means, it's essentially a business model where you think of a product and then you don't go through all of the effort of creating the product. You delegate this entire task, the entire creation of the product, to some external company dealing with actual queries, etc., to maybe the same, maybe some other company. Usually it's a different company. And so the only thing you do is the investment and the sales and marketing. but the creation of the product, the shipping of the product, the handling of the actual product is entirely outsourced. Even the design could be entirely outsourced. You just have the idea, the investment, and the marketing and sales. So I decided to try this with a friend of mine just to test the waters. And that was the point I wanted to test. We wanted to either fail or succeed fast to see if it's viable, not make actual money or anything right away. And so we started researching how this actually works, and I was absolutely thoroughly amazed by the state of the world, really. Like, people who know about this probably find it quite trivial, but I personally did not know to what extent this process had been streamlined. Like, you just Google, this process had been streamlined. Like, you just Google, you find many factories across China who can do it for you. Anything, like any product you can think of, essentially, unless it's exceptionally complex as a thing, but probably it's not. And so they just offer to do it, and they have deals with Amazon directly. And so you never even have to see your product in person. You just hire a freelance designer on Fiverr, they make the design, you send the designs to the factory in China, they produce the units, they ship them directly to Amazon fulfillment centers across the whole world, including the States, Europe, etc. And then you just list them on Amazon, and then Amazon fulfills it by shipping it out, dealing with refunds, returns, stuff like this. So this whole infrastructure, and we were like, oh wow, this is amazing, let's try it out. Apparently everybody's doing it. And then we hit this wall that, yeah, this whole thing is amazing, as you can't just order a couple of items. You have to order hundreds or thousands to make it worth. Most factories wouldn't talk to you to make 10 of this thing, whatever it is. You have to make hundreds or thousands minimum, which means that your minimum investment goes up and your involvement with this whole thing goes up right away. And we didn't want this. We wanted to just try it out. So instead, what we did is we just found a local producer to produce these objects locally in Canada.
What were the objects?
The objects were t-shirts. We just wanted to see if we can sell branded t-shirts with various messages. So we got the designs of Fiverr, we printed them in Canada with some local company, and yeah, the price per one t-shirt was quite high compared to if we batch delivered from Canada with some local company, and yeah, the price per one t-shirt was quite high compared to if we batch delivered from China, and we had to deal with deliveries ourselves as well. However, this way we're free to invest a much smaller amount, have a much lower quantity produced, just to test our idea whether it's going to work. And so, yeah, this way, this is my story on how we were wide-eyed with the idea of, oh my god, this is so scalable, it's amazing, the Amazon-China line. But the entry level was just too high to try it out. So we decided to be pious, we decided to be careful, cautious, we invested much less, we tested it out, and then we drew our conclusions. In the end, actually, it was a success. We sold every single one. It was pretty good. And at that stage, if we had wanted to proceed, then it was kind of safe to go to the Chinese factories and Amazon fulfillment stuff. And it was kind of safe to go to the Chinese factories and Amazon fulfillment stuff because we knew it works. But before that, it would have been preemptive.
How much money did you make on this?
Not much. I mean, but this is the point, right? This is the point of the story, that the whole thing is like an experiment on whether it's viable. So in the end, we made I don't know precisely, when you put, because there's a bit less tangible cost, right? But I would say $100, maybe something like this.
How much did you invest?
Several hundred, maybe 500-600 overall.
You would say 15 to 20% return on investment.
No, it should be low. It sounds wrong. It should be a bit less. It should be about between 10 and 15%.
This is very good, man. This
pre-tax though. Pre-tax.
Well, find a tax haven then.
Not Canada, right?
Yeah. Good job.
Yeah, in India, actually, we also felt much better about ourselves because it was, locally sourced, American, US and Canada, which means that it was locally sourced compared to, where you make it and then where you sell it. I'm out of the picture. I'm not part of it.
All right. So they should feel good about themselves. buying from their
Everybody except me should feel good about
yeah.
themselves. Yeah, the end of the story is actually that, we did this, we realized that it works, it was a good idea, but I just don't really want to be in drop shipping as a field. It doesn't feel very fulfilling, so decided not to proceed with it.
All right. This was a fun story. I have several other topics that I want to discuss. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about trade-offs. Trade-offs are very important. Any business should learn that there is a trade-off between how much you get done and the quality of what you get. So quantity and quality. The quantity and quality trade-off between how much you get done and the quality of what you get. So quantity and quality. The quantity and quality trade-off is there everywhere, and it's especially true for startups and newly starting companies, because you have your whole business in front of you. Think about a company. A company is designed, it's created to be a perpetual entity. A human lifetime is 70, 80 years, whatever on average. And then you have a company which is designed to live forever. And you start on day one, and then you have trade-offs everywhere, right? You are to build this company which will not probably, but it can legally outlive you, right? So I'm gonna start first. In the beginning, as a new worker in the workforce, I was very pedantic, right? I wanted to get everything right. I wanted to, I don't know, like I'm publishing some PDF which doesn't have a comma somewhere, and somebody points it out to me, and I will definitely go back to the Word file. I will place the comma, export it in PDF, and replace it wherever needed. Now, this is extremely time consuming, because you can never be perfect in anything you do. You can try to be perfect, but more often than not, it doesn't pay off. It's great to have more people around you, maybe a proofreader, to take care of these issues and mitigate the risks that are involved with each one of them. But most of the time, the Pareto principle is working. So with 20% of the effort, you're doing 80% of the work, and the rest of 80% of the effort is contributing to just 20% of the outcome. But yeah, with time, you learn that there are trade-offs. How about you? What is a story that you would like to share?
Okay, well, fully that, it seems to be a matter of not just personal preference, but also experience. And that, when I was starting as a software engineer, definitely I was very much the perfectionist. Like, it was unthinkable to have any bug, small, large, and just let it be. Like, no, that's unacceptable, everything needs to be fixed, etc. Then as you kind of develop and grow and get more acquainted with how things work, you start accepting that everything always has issues and you need to prioritize, as you said. And in particular, the trade-off that you discussed was quantity versus quality, right? That's the particular trade-off that we're talking about.
You can pick another one.
No, I think I still want to talk about quantity versus quality. It's a very good topic because it's very transferable. It applies to anything ever, not just startups. It's super universal. And on my side, it's a sort of similar story. It supports the same point, but it comes from the perspective of software again, where we had this, let's say, the whole sign up story of the product. There's the sign up page, then you sign up, and then you receive an email, you have to confirm your email, and then you get like a welcome page, then you go to your dashboard. It's kind of a similar feature of many other of many different software solutions, and we had the same. And there were some known issues with it. We knew that, say on this screen size, it doesn't look very good, something breaks, etc. And it was somewhere very down below on my backlog, a task to fix it. But I never really put it high up because it was a minor issue. It wasn't really a blocker. It was more of a inconvenience for, say, and it was somewhere very down below on my backlog, a task to fix it. But I never really put it high up because it was a minor issue. It wasn't really a blocker. It was more of a inconvenience for, say, 1% of our potential users. It kept bothering me though. The perfectionist in me kept being like, oh, come on, you have to fix this. You have to fix this. It cannot stay like this. I know it's not the highest priority, but, I wish for the day when we're done with the more priority tasks, higher priority tasks, so we can actually fix this. And in the end, what happened, and really just shattered the drive for perfection, was that, well, the time came when the product evolved sufficiently that the whole sign-up process got a complete revamp. It was completely overhauled. It was done sort of from scratch because we had completely different requirements for what it should do and how it should look. And so all of those issues that stayed at the bottom of the backlog disappeared. They didn't exist anymore. They were not defined anymore. And I've seen the same pattern happen many times over, where if you intentionally don't solve some problem over a long period of time, it might even go away on its own. Like, it's not a given that problems stick around and only get worse if you don't cure them. That's not always the case. There are certain problems that actually can cure themselves, and if you preemptively do them, it doesn't make sense, because then all of this effort to actually do the task is for nothing in the end when something changes. So yeah, always do kind of what's necessary at the moment, and don't preempt events.
I cannot agree more with this. As in the same way I have the backlog of tasks, I have the backlog of issues. I've been using Jira as a tool to organize my work 3 years ago, maybe. And I had this future, right? And then I transferred it to the next tool I was using. It was a Trello. And then I transferred this list again into Monday.com, which was another tool that we transferred to. So the business was evolving, the requirements were evolving, and I was just transferring this list. In the end, I transferred it to OneNote as a part of the documentation that I handed over to people. And I was going through them, and I was like, wow, this is like a typo. Some A was not an A, but it was O. I don't know, it was a completely stupid typo, which would require, 3 people working on this in different ways. And I'm like, this is so low priority. Maybe the perfectionist in me 3 years ago was thinking that this is an issue, but it doesn't take anything away from the good product that you have created. Now, this thing happens to me again and again and again, that in the same way that you're saying, and again and again, that in the same way that you're saying. And I believe that the reason for this is that the timestamp of the issue is very important. So once you find an issue, it consumes you, right? You're like, oh, it's a bug, I have to fix it, this shouldn't stay this way, and so on. Now, the next day, you don't feel as strongly about it. And then the next day, you see another issue, which is much bigger, and you're like, okay, issue from the 2 days ago, you are deprioritized. And then the more time goes by, the more you realize that this issue, it was momentarily...
It's kind of a feature, right?
At the end of the day, you realize that this issue was a non-issue compared to all these other things that you have to do. And finally, to support your other example, one of the courses, my first course that I had created, the statistics for data science, I was the one animating it, I was the one writing it and everything. So me being the person animating it meant it was awful. It was like so ugly that you can't imagine. People liked it, people enjoyed it. However, it was not pleasing to the eye, right? And then we had this new designer that joined our team. She was one of the best people I've ever worked with. Shout out to her if she's listening, Marta. And she was joining the team, and I'm like, okay, it's a new designer. We have to start working together in a way, and I have to give her some lower priority task, which if she fails at performing it, we could just scratch that and, get rid of her and get rid of options and make them beautiful. So in the process of her making this, I actually fixed all the issues that I had, this long backlog of issues. Some of them were completely cut out of it, so I didn't have to fix them at all. Many of them were fixed by Marta herself instead of me, which was very helpful as well. And at the end of the day, if I had fixed any of these issues before, I would have done triple work.
In this episode, Iliya and I share with you our experiences from having built various startups. As you know, right now we're in the process of building our first joint company, Thriveta.com. And you know what would be really cool? If it were to go viral. How could that happen, you ask? That's where I call upon you, dear listener. Tell your family, your friends, your colleagues about Thriveta. Spread the word. Best of all, how good would it be if some of them were looking for a solution just like that, and they start using the tool you suggested to them? You'll be forever revered as the tech startup guru that you truly are. So why not begin now? Think of anyone around yourself who could get paid for an online meeting and send them a link to Thriveta.com. Let them discover it for themselves. So actually to close this topic about the quantity versus quality trade-off, I think what's very important to stress though is that you're only allowed to deprioritize things as a very, very conscious, realized choice, right? You don't just close your eyes about issues and sweep them under the carpet without really consciously thinking about it and thinking about this trade-off that you're committing to, right? If you see an issue and you just kind of don't feel like dealing with it, so you sweep it under the carpet subconsciously. Some people do it subconsciously, they don't even realize they have ignored some issue. That's really bad. Like, never do that. The point is that you're consciously choosing not to focus your energy on dealing with whatever issue there may be. It doesn't even have to be an issue. It could be, some trying out some new idea, some new branching of the product. And if you're consciously choosing to deprioritize it, that's fine. And let's say in my Trello boards, I have those no action labels precisely for this. It's an idea that I've assessed, or an issue I've assessed, and I've decided, okay, there's no action here at this point, but I know about it. By the way, the bells of Rome are tolling again.
Flex.
Flex from Rome. So I would say let's have one last topic on the boilerplate startup. And if our listeners enjoy this topic, you guys can let us know. We can talk for this on this topic for days in a row. We can talk about this for ages. But for now, we're failing fast. So we just want to do one episode, see how you guys like it, and then we can proceed. So, okay, let's choose one last subtopic within the boilerplate startup overall topic. Do you have any choices? I believe I have one, but what about you? Do you want to pitch an idea?
I don't want to be the one giving the last one because I have so many others that I want to talk about.
Okay. I'll just say mine then, and then in boilerplate startup 2.0, we can start with two of yours in a row. That's a trade-off. That's a trade-off right there. Let's talk about incentives. I know it's something you have, we've discussed before, and you and just how to use incentives in various ways. I think it's quite a useful conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, how can you apply to the startup conversation incentives and playing incentives right?
Okay. I can talk about incentives for ages, so I'm happy that we didn't talk about my other idea that I wanted to bring up. Now, incentives, a very quick overview. So what are incentives? Incentives is like motivators. So how do you make somebody do something? There are many different ways in which you can look at the issue. However, as a manager, you want to give the right incentives to your employees so that they work better and that you have aligned incentives. As co-founders, you have to have the same incentives in the sense you have shared equity usually. So if the company does well, all the co-founders or all the equity holders for that matter are different mechanisms that exist to achieve this. When we're talking about a company, it's very clear. Equity holders, debt holders, for instance, why would the bank give you a loan? Well, they have the incentive because debt has a higher priority than equity. So if the company goes bust, you first pay off the debtors. The whole financial system is very well accustomed to this, and the incentives are completely right. Now, it's more interesting when you have people and you have random people that you have to incentivize in some ways. So let's think about it from a marketing point of view. Now, you have a product and you have to make it work in some way, right? You have to start selling it to people, and you have some price, and then you have to incentivize them in some way. One way is to give them cash. Let's say you give cash to someone to, let's say, review your product. This is a very well defined incentive because it involves cash. Another example is on a lower scale is I'm gonna promote you if you promote me, right? So the incentive is let's be friends and cross promote each other. Everything that you do, everywhere that you go, you have incentive is I'm gonna promote you if you promote me, right? So the incentive is let's be friends and cross promote each other. Everything that you do, everywhere that you go, you have incentives which are at play, and you have to be very good at juggling with those incentives, right? Now, I have to give you a story. Is it why I'm a bit wary about this incentives conversation is because a lot of manipulation is going through incentives, right? So if I tell a story about how I incentivized someone to do something, it's basically me telling the story about how I manipulated this person to do what I wanted them to do, right? That's how manipulation works. You have to incentivize the other person in some way. Now I have to think about this.
If you want, I can tell. I don't know to what extent it's gonna be like a personal anecdote story, but I can give my 2 cents about incentives. That something I've talked about with actually several ways about corporations is that corporations to some extent fail to incentivize activity and boldness, right? So with several people I know, acquaintances, friends who have worked at large corporations, they have discovered the same issue that corporations often seem to fail to incentivize being bold, being rigorous in your activity. On the contrary, they disincentivize failure, right? So if you attempt something and you fail, you incur some cost, you bear like a massive burden, you get fired, you get demoted or something. But if you just kind of don't do much, just coast, corporations generally seem to be, okay with this. They fail to incentivize that you have to be bold, you have to take this extra step, go the extra mile to be really productive. Whereas in startups usually is the opposite. It's a smaller enough organization that you can't really afford to just coast and go with the flow and don't really do much outside of, let's say, the bare minimum. And so in terms of this incentivization to not be dormant, I think in the trading company I was working at, to a large extent, they had the right structure there, because the way it worked is that everybody is divided into trading teams, and each trading team, or most trading teams, are fairly small, maybe about a dozen people, maybe even less, fewer. And Stanis Baratheon approves of the fewer. What this means is that each trader is very much directly impacted by how much money the overall trading desk creates, because they get a bonus based on this. And so they have a super direct incentive. If you make money, act, right? Like, you can't just afford to go with the flow and do the bare minimum. You have to be out there, you have to find opportunities, you have to be active, because in the end your bottom line depends on it. And I liked how they incorporated the software people in this structure, and that's what I wanted to give an example, because I entered the company as a software engineer, and generally it's the traders who are pushing for those, let's try this, let's try that. They want to be more active, they want to make more money. Their salaries are very dependent on, well, the bottom line is very dependent not just on the salaries, but on the bonuses they receive from successful trades. At the same time, software people in trading companies are in this very precarious situation, because the same applied to us. We still had bonuses related to how well the desk was doing, we were still very much incentivized to be very active and proactive and find opportunities, deploy new to how well the desk was doing. We were still very much incentivized to be very active and proactive and find opportunities, deploy newer strategies that might be a bit riskier but are expected to make money. But at the same time, because we're the software developers, we cannot afford to have bugs in production and trading software, because this, we don't know how it could react. You have to turn everything off immediately and stuff. And so we bore the risk of, anything going wrong with the software could incur enormous costs for the company. Automated trades could cost millions per minute if left unchecked. And so software people were in this funny situation where each software developer has the incentive to be super proactive and push for releases of new strategies to make more money, but at the same time bears an enormous cost if anything goes wrong. So we're incentivized to be exceptionally cautious about it, right? Because if the software has issues, it's very easy to track to who caused the issue, and they'll be fired or take some financial hit or something. Yeah, the subtle play of incentives there, of how to both incentivize the software people to really chase after novelty and be bold and push new products out, but at the same time make sure they don't overdo it, that they're very cautious, was by allowing them to share profit from the overall desk profits with a bonus, non-fixed bonus, but also really punish any type of software issues that were blatantly left untested or anything, just on the spot, like fired or something. So yeah, that was my experience, this very careful play of failure.
Yeah, the only problem there that whenever you and your colleagues from this company talk about this, the only problem that I have with whatever examples you're giving is that all the people that work there are extremely exceptional, and they are self-motivated at the highest level. We're talking about entry jobs that are in top 0.001% of salaries in the world, right? The people, they're so self-motivated that the incentives that you have to place there are, yeah, do your job, don't risk, like don't make a mistake and stuff like this. Now, what actual companies are actually facing are other types of issues, like you have employees that don't want to work or that they're slacking. Oh, I had a guy, this is the best story. I was looking at his computer and he was supposed to be doing whatever, and it was this page. He starts glitching and then he's like zzz, like left and right. It's super strange, and I'm like, oh my god, something is happening to him, some stroke is happening to him, and I'm really concerned. And then there's the word file, and then there's when you're starting to write, there's this straight line which is just ticking, and it's like appearing, disappearing, appearing, as if you're just about to write, and the guy's glitching, and the thing is just like giving some rhythm to the whole thing. And then at some point I'm like, what should I do? And then he stops, and then after 30 seconds it happens again. And I'm like, what is going on? And then at some point I start staring at him for straight 5 minutes because I want to understand what's going on. Then I see him that every 20 seconds to 40 seconds he's out and tabbing, and he's been listening to the whole thing, so he has the whole commentary, and he's glitching because he's very nervous about what's going on, but he can't really watch it because he's at work. And now you have to incentivize this person. I don't know, you can have equity, you can have different things that you give, but at the end of the day it has to be some manipulative mind game. In my opinion, the incentives there are different, and most of the time it's like this. You know that someone can do a very good job, but they're not doing it for one reason or another, and you have the carrot and the stick, right? These are the two things that generally work. However, I've been trying to avoid both because I don't want to give a carrot. When someone has this very bad behavior, which is serially bad, And then I don't want to be like, I'm going to give you a bonus if you get better. Like, to me, this is not the correct approach. I'm only giving these bad examples. When someone has this very bad behavior, which is serially bad, and then I don't want to be like, I'm going to give you a bonus if you get better. Like, to me, this is not the correct approach. I'm only giving these bad examples. I just want to give some good examples. I just want to say, like, whenever somebody is doing a good job and they care about their reputation, you should definitely commend them publicly. You should be like, you're a very good worker, you have done an amazing job. Like, everybody, like, please cheer a bit for this person. Like, it's extremely, if you find that someone gets joy from being publicly commended, do that publicly. If they prefer private to be privately commended, do it privately. Like, find the way they prefer it, because there are these people, they've done an amazing job, and I'm like, yeah, the whole team, come on, it's an amazing job. And this person actually felt really bad about being in conversation. They told me, you know what, I really don't like that you publicly commended me. And I'm like, wow, sorry, I didn't expect this. So since then, I have always commended this person one to one.
Yeah, actually, so what you're saying about commending somebody and that you should do it, that's the best part, because having to manage some process, some people, a team, it's quite a task. There's many aspects to it, and the best part of it, I think, is this part. When some task has been done, it's been done well, and you get to congratulate somebody for doing a good job in front of everybody else, and you're super happy because the thing got done, the people are happy, you're happy, other people in the company from outside, let's say your team, are happy because it got done. This is the best part of it. So this is the most rewarding. But yeah, so bottom line of incentive so far, there's various ways to do it, and you should, it's kind of the duality of using the carrot and the stick is also that you should incentivize people not to make mistakes, but also not to stay dormant, to move forward, but not make mistakes. Because if you do only one side of it, then you risk them being either idle or reckless, and these are also bad. So it's about, basically keeping them between the carrot and the stick, but not too much in either side. Okay, well,
I can talk about incentives for a full episode.
You call it incentives. You also call it manipulation. I was going to say I call it manipulation, but you call it manipulations. Yeah, well, we would like to hear our listeners' opinion on this and whether we should talk more about it. So feel free to contact us. Tell us. Feels like we should say our closing words.
This was the most non-boilerplate startup episode we've ever recorded. How about we give it another name?
We can rename it now that we've actually done it. I was actually thinking about this in the last section while you said just now as well. Now that we've recorded it, it could be just and it's the point about naming that we made, right? Like we named this thing, we said this is the boilerplate startup, and then it evolved completely out of scope. And now it's hard to change it.
That's why, man, I wanted to call the other episode Snake Steak, because you just call it with the random name and it's...
What did I call this one? The cheap stick. This could be cheap stick.
Oh, it's the cheap stick. Oof. It's a negative.
No, it's a bad name. It has negative connotations. Naming is hard. See, people, naming is hard.
Well, carrot and the stick. It's not, but it's not what the episode is about.
See, people, naming is hard.
Well, carrot and the stick. It's not, but it's not what the episode is about. The episode is about realizations and depth and...
These are the type of conversations, where would we have this conversation? So it's kind of the after work pint conversation we just had.
After work pint. It's kind of a lessons learned.
Okay, startup lessons anthology.
This is good. The anthology is a good one.
We had to use anthology.
Startup lessons, an anthology.